Thank you very much, Ian. Well, I get a chance to sort of introduce myself by having the next period of time to share our work. Look, because this is recorded, I'll move quite quickly in order to leave some time for questions. So there'll be some areas that I'll skate over, and it'll be a real taster. So yeah, I'm Executive Director of NCLS Research. I've been part of the Research Centre for 35 years now, and became director in 2007. So, yep, this has been, I guess, my life's work to date, and it's been a real privilege to serve the church with research. And obviously, I'm committed to research. I think our part of who NCLS is that we've come out of mission departments of the churches, and therefore you will hear the frame of what we do very much as mission research. So the reason we're having these conversations now is that over the last few years, James DL, the Vice Chancellor, has been conversing with me about the possibility of a partnership with the vision of AUT becoming a university, and understanding that the distinctive of being a university is you do research. And that's basically the simple definition of being a university is you have to do research. So James, with that vision in mind, put the groundwork in to say we need to support the college affiliates to actually strengthen the research culture across, because that's what's going to need to happen, and to take the existing research and to sort of basically we're like the booster for you. So the partnership was launched in April, and that's the launch moment to sort of, you've got to have a tangible moment where you go, right, it happened, the thing happened, and we're now excitingly into the what does this mean and how do we make this work? So that's where we sit at the moment. NCLS Research has done a range of work over the years, and I guess part of, as I mentioned, and I'm sure all of you know, is we are focused on the contemporary church. So obviously we've been working now for the last 4 decades. So we have some really great history, contemporary history about church life, but we're driven. I would say our posture for the church is, as I said, we came out of the mission department. So we have a strong missional focus. That's very much part of our DNA, that it is about the church being equipped, being a sent, that we are a sent people, and that our churches need to be healthy in order to connect with their communities. And so our work has really covered, if you like, we started and we continue to have a body of research around the area of the Australian community. That's where we started. Who is my neighbour? And so every year we use census materials, government census data, and have done so to map the wider community, sort of to understand their hurts and hopes and needs. Every year we run an Australian community survey. So we have an annual check-in of the spiritual profile of Australians. So that's running in the field right at the moment. So that is an incredible asset, because it's changing so quickly that we have a snapshot of the community. Having said what is the context, the changing context, the missional context of Australia, by mapping that first, we then said we need to understand how to be the body of Christ, to be healthy church in Australia, and that led us to running the National Church Life Survey. So our next focus is church life and health, but with the purpose of doing that missional work, so to do that work better. And the kind of projects that we do in that, we do a new churches project, which is around church planting. There's the national survey as well, which is coming up this year. So there's that sort of that church life and health, and it's about leadership as well within the church. The third thing I'm just going to name for you in terms of things that you may not be aware of is in the last few years, we've moved into working in the faith-based schools space. And we run a student spiritual life survey, and we're piloting a staff spiritual life survey in term 3 this year. So that is a whole growing body of work, and that is really linked to the fact that we have determined it's obvious that the church has become more disconnected from the community over time, and young people are missing, and but we can see that they're attached to schools. So they're still going, faith-based schools are still attractive to the Australian community. And so we said, for the sake of the church in mission, we need to help schools reflect on spirituality. So that's what that's about. So I'll come back to that. But just to give you the breadth of the kind of work, you may only know the National Church Life Survey, but we actually have this base of the community, the church, and now the school sector. So let me just dive into the National Church Life Survey part of it. And again, you probably know this, so I'll skim over it, but the National Church Life Survey happens every 5 years. And I've actually got some Catholic data there, so just ignore the references to the Catholic Church, but I pulled in the wrong slide. But it's the largest, longest running survey of church life in the world. So Australian researchers, your students and staff and any scholars associated with AUT are accessing, by the partnership we now have, you are accessing the biggest database on church life in the world. Therefore, Australian researchers can answer questions that no one else in the world can answer, can explore hypotheses, to test ideas. We can do things no one else can. And that's where I think if we can build a community, a network here of practice, we can do some incredibly exciting things together. So there are 20 plus denominations take part, thousands of local churches, thousands of leaders, hundreds of thousands of individuals. So we are about to run the 2026 National Church Life Survey in the next few months. So my big push at the moment, just so you know what's happening this year, because this is a big data collection moment. So in the same year as the national census that the government runs, we run the 5-yearly National Church Life Survey. So there's a huge collection moment happening right now, and we're designing surveys and getting them all ready and building various surveys. So we're asking churches to take part. That's the big push at the moment, to really get everybody to sign up. In August, there will be basically it's the same time as the government census happens. In August, we will run what we call a church activities survey. So one person in every church will tell us something about their activities. Then in September, October, local churches who participate will complete the full comprehensive church life survey. And every leader, whether they're ordained, non-ordained, whoever the leaders are in a local church, will complete the leaders survey. So that's we're in the hot seat at the moment. This is the mix of denominations that take part in the National Church Life Survey. So when you're doing studies or when you're thinking about research projects, the breadth of participation is on the screen there at the moment. So we have the Catholics, Anglicans, Uniting, Lutheran, Presbyterians. We have the Pentecostal movements engaged. We have Baptists, Salvation Army. We have smaller churches as well. So it's a very rich and diverse foundation. And that's been the case over the 35 years, that rich breadth of churches have taken part. So you can, of course, dive in. And if you want to do a research project on a particular grouping, we've probably got, talk to us and go, I'd like to do a study of Baptists. Okay, we can help you do a study of Baptists with their collaboration, of course. The kinds of data we collect in the National Church Life Survey. So before I talk about other areas, I'm going to talk about the kinds of data and the topics we cover, just to tantalize you, but also we'll talk about the ways that we can share this information as well to sort of access. So one kind of information that we have, or research projects could be wrapped around, is people, church attenders who go, who are part of church life. So you can imagine with your students, and I think John's idea of saying, how is this relevant, say, to a research methods course, to use as practice examples. I think, something really small that you could use to encourage your students to just have a taste of research. This would be a good example where you go, let's think about who church attenders are and something about them. And it can be a very simple idea that they can look at. Because we ask everybody in the church to take part, we can do something that is extremely rare. We can do what we call aggregated data, which is the whole organization. We can study a whole it's like a 360-degree picture of an organization. We have these local churches and we have this information around, it's like a stakeholder survey, if you like. Everybody in the church has given information about that church. So we not only know what the people think, we know what the leaders think, and we also know what activities and programs they do. So we can study organizational culture like no one else in the world can. We can study organizational climate. We can study the relationship between leadership and what the people experience is. So incredibly rich opportunities there. So I just want to that's what's hidden under that one line is we could do world-breaking research because we have thousands of organizations, local religious organizations, congregations that we can actually do studies of. We also have leaders, individual leaders that we can actually study. We know something about the programs and staffing and activities of churches. And then there's that community information we can put in as well. So you get this real sense of it's a systems approach. It's like every aspect of why something might be the way it is, we've captured information about it. This is how we're presenting the survey instruments for the 2026 National Church Life Survey. So this is a sort of an easy way for you to get your head around the tools that we use. First, there is this church activities survey. So that's the one that's going to happen in August. One person from every church tells us about what's going on in their local church. And we will use that to map the activities of local churches. Then there's the main church life survey, which is the blue one there. That is about who are you? How old are you? Male, female, educational background. Where did you last go to church? Did you go to church as a child? Did your parents go to church? What do you think about the preaching? What do you think about the worship? What do you think about the music? What do you think about the leadership? So that whole piece. In the church life survey this time, for the first time, we are going to ask about personal well-being. Every single attender will be asked about their own well-being, so their own flourishing. So in addition to evaluating church life, they will do a self-evaluation of how they're going, their levels of satisfaction and well-being. We also get leaders to do that, and I'll speak about that as well. So in the leaders survey, leaders are not only what roles do you have, what training have you got, what do you think about X, Y, and Z, what are your attitudes? What leadership development have you done? What would you like to do? How's your well-being? How's your resilience? And there's this whole package there as well. Each of those survey tools then from what we do as a team is we then produce outputs. And these, again, what can you use? You may be able to use these outputs that we create. So one source for you to do research on is go and download a free NCLS report on a particular issue and write reflections on it. Ask your students to do application work, but even for your own research projects to go, look, we've done the design, we've done the data collection, we've done the ethics work for you, and you get to just get straight onto the interesting thing of, what does this mean? What is it? And so that's where we give you a leg up, a fast way of getting straight into your research and doing that sort of interesting analysis, if you like, and application. So just as a sample here, the activities survey, we end up producing reports on the church life surveys. Every local church gets its own report. Every denomination gets their own report on the life and health of their denomination. So again, let me give you an example. Maybe you would go, a student may be doing a case study on a particular church, and you say, why don't you get them to get their church life profile from their church life survey results? And then you've got a snapshot of every single attender in that church has given their evaluation on that local church life. So when you go and visit and do your case study on the ground and you do some kind of grounded, approach or something, you also have already collected every single person's view about their experience of church life. Easy peasy. As long as the local church gives it to you, we can't give you a local church results. But if that local church says, sure, you can have our profile, then you've done an incredibly complex piece of research already, which gives your students a leg up, away you go. So again, You can feel I'm trying to, say you can accelerate the amount of activity and research that you can get done because your students aren't back at step one, you're not back at step one, you know, you can do that kind of work. The leaders work as well is, there's so many, there'll be so much work around leaders that I'll say more about as well. So now I'm going to give you again a sort of too much information about the topics we cover, but again, I'm trying to say if you're interested in an area, we probably have covered it. We probably have something about it. We have hundreds and hundreds of survey questions that we already have data on. Forget what we've already designed this time. And I'm sitting here with 9 in the last few days. These are the printouts I'm scribbling on, 9 sample surveys that I'm designing for attenders to do. So there are 20 surveys in the 2026 National Church Life Survey that we're building, 20 different surveys that will go across the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And each of those has a glorious array of interesting questions. This is from 2021 because I'm still dropping in questions for 2026. But we're finishing this week, so it's basically closed this week. So in 2021, you can see the kind of flavor here. This is attenders. What did the people tell us? They told us about their personal faith experiences, their Bible reading, all sorts of questions around discipleship, faith formation, gifts of the Spirit, all sorts of interesting things. Then we look at their community, whether they feel they belong, how involved they are, connected in the community. We've got questions of social capital questions, social cohesion questions, inclusion questions, all sorts of things in that space. Worship. So a lot of you are interested in preaching. So we have an evaluation of preaching from every single attender. And then you can go, well, do the women like it more than the men? Do the young people like it more than the older people? Do the people who are more involved like it more than the others? Do the people who believe X, Y, Z like it more than, like where is the preaching landing? We could link personality of the preachers to evaluation of preaching by attenders. You name your question of interest, dream up your most creative question. We could probably construct the data in a way to address your questions in that space. So you have that evaluate. We know what the leaders are trying to do and say, the way they preach, for example, and then what attenders actually hear and experience. So again, attenders asking questions of leaders. How do you see your leaders? Are they innovative? Are they adaptive? Do they listen to me? Do they empower me? Do they inspire me? So the attender evaluation of leadership. So I'll just throw in this interesting fact that we've discovered that when you evaluate church health and you're looking for a healthy church, if you ask leaders to self-evaluate what they do and how they practice leadership, you get a relationship with healthy church. When you ask attenders, it is much more predictive of church health. So self-evaluation versus other people's evaluation. So this is, again, NCLS is unique because you've got everybody else evaluating leadership rather than a self-evaluation. Very powerful studies. If we can, dream up something, you can do really powerful things. COVID won't be in it this time, but things about how do you feel about your parenting? How do you feel about your faith and work life? How do you feel about sharing faith? What do you think about youth issues? And then we've got a whole lot of social issues that we always cover, everything from cross-cultural, like cultural diversity, hot potatoes like abortion, euthanasia, denominational hot potatoes, the things that denominations, have strong opinions about. We ask questions about those. We've asked those for many times. So if you want to have fun with some spicy questions, we've got them. So politics, we've got the politics questions. How have you voted? How will you vote? If there was an election now, how would you vote right now? What political action do you take? So you can see it's incredibly diverse. Money, giving, global mission questions. Do you support global mission? Do you support global aid and poverty? Do you do it by prayer, by money, by practice? So I'm going very fast, but I hope you're getting that flavor of there's so much information that you can dive into and go, well, I particularly care about um, a certain group and I want to know their opinion about this one issue. And I go, I can probably help you. So that's the big attender ones because we've got all these surveys. Just a taste for the leaders surveys. Some of you may want to do leadership studies, or be equipped in your own teaching around leadership. So there's the one of our big agendas is well-being and sustainability. So we ask about well-being, we ask about resilience. We can do a matrix. We have a map of burnout and thriving. So there's that sustainable leadership agenda. There's the effective leadership agenda. So that is everything from gifts and talents and against self-evaluation, but also how different aspects, how it's going, roles, innovativeness, training. So leadership pipelines, emerging leadership, identifying new leaders. What are you offering them? What have you experienced? What do you think you need? So anybody who's interested in leadership development, again, we've got a whole lot of leadership pipeline questions. Again, you may come back to me with a hypothesis. I want to see if leaders who do this think that, so or what is the most effective leadership pipeline pathway that ends up with the most people who are candidating for ministry or doing more training, or what is your outcome that you're looking for? We can do that kind of work. Again, we know about what's the leader's backgrounds, what their personal faith background is, a whole lot of stuff on governance, and again, some social issues there. So we get the leaders' views. So how do leaders vote versus how do attenders vote? This is what we've found in the past, little sort of research finding for you. If you think left and right, local church leaders tend to be further left and further right, and attenders tend to be in the messy middle. So it doesn't align necessarily. Attender voting patterns and leader voting patterns that's an interesting little study. Someone might want to do that updated one in 2026, just to tantalize you again. This is an example a little bit more about the leaders survey, because I think you may have particular interest in this, and that is these are the kind of topics that we cover in the leaders survey a little bit more. So as I said, ministry, positions and context. So where are the leaders located? So we know, are they in a small church? Are they in a rural area? What kind of context is their leadership taking place in? We know then how old they are, male or female, levels of education, theological education versus general education. Then we find out about their well-being and effectiveness, their resilience. We ask them to evaluate the health and vitality of their church. And as I mentioned, leadership development and training, roles. So what I think I should be doing, the knowing doing gap. So I think my role is this. What I actually spend my time on is this, that sort of integration. How do I feel about what I'm spending my time on, what I feel equipped to do? How satisfied am I as a leader? And then innovation as well. Just to touch on vitality, because this is a key area for us. So this is an example of, we get leaders to evaluate the vitality of their churches. And we have a whole framework for evaluating vitality. But this is an area where every single leader in 2026 that takes part will be invited to reflect on the vitality of their church. And this is one question there. This is what the well-being material looks like as well, just to give you a taste. So I said, for leaders as to whether they're thriving or burning out. And that matrix at the bottom there, the way that works is there's two scales, and we can actually map all the leaders onto that matrix, which is got 4 quadrants. And basically, if you evaluate yourself as high ministry effectiveness and low emotional exhaustion, you end up thriving, managing well and thriving. The other quadrant, though, is you're highly effective but highly exhausted. That's your happy but exhausted quadrant. Down the bottom, on the bottom right, is the low exhaustion, low effectiveness. So you feel underused. And then down the bottom is you're highly exhausted and low effectiveness, and you end up struggling. So everybody basically gets mapped onto the matrix. And leaders are mostly, well, in 2021, 22, they were all up in the top left and top right. They felt very purposeful. They felt like they were doing really great work, and they were very stretched. So, you know, I guess you're not picking up all the leaders who've burnt out and left, but it's often a bit surprising how few are down in the struggling quadrant, right? Ministry is something that sustains you because it's so purposeful and there's so much vocation wrapped around it that they actually, in other industries, people would burn out, and ministers tend to keep going longer than in other ministries or in other sectors. So that's an interesting little. I'm throwing research findings in for you as well as you go, but there's so much work that can be done here. Um, Resilience. We've discovered these six foundations that underpin whether or not a leader will be burning out or thriving. Because there's all this stuff coming in at you that you can't control, but we can invest in personal foundations. And this is an area just to say that, again, a new thing we're doing in this survey is we're going to not only do a map of all the leaders in a particular group, but we're going to allow individuals to actually sort of sign up and continue to track their own well-being and resilience. So you may have a situation where, for pastoral supervision purposes or something that enables individual leaders, or let me throw this out, maybe your students, maybe your student body or your staff could actually do the leader well-being and resilience check-in each year, and then you would have it for your college, for example, right? Then somebody could do a research project on it, but I'll just throw that out as we're going not only from the research perspective, but it's going to become a tool that is able to be used to go, well, here's some benchmarks, and here's how you're traveling at the moment, in your whatever the cohort is that you have interest in. Again, these tools exist now, so you may find, let's do a research project where we apply the tool to a particular cohort. You might say, again, I'm making this up as I go along, those missionaries who are on the mission field at the moment, or those who are returned missionaries or something. And you could use the tools that we give you to go and collect data from a new grouping and then do your own studies. How are those returned missionaries going, or something like that. So we're offering existing reports, existing data sets, existing tools to accelerate your capacity and productivity as researchers. This is the last one. This is the church activities one, which I mentioned is happening in August. And that is, we just basically map the landscape in terms of structures, property, finance, roles, the activities they're running, technology they use, and things like that. This year, we've got a whole lot more on safeguarding embedded in the survey, sort of safe church material, which will align with the protocols that are out there now and the policies that churches need to fulfill. So if that's a particular area of interest, we've got that as well. I just want to say something about the church activities survey, which is this one person per church that we're going to do, so you're aware of it. We have a partnership with a group called Neighbour, and they are together. We're going to do what we're calling it's a national impact audit, and it's basically collecting this information about the local community services that local churches are running, and then and we will collect what congregations are doing. Neighbour will collect what agencies are doing, Baptist Care, Catholic Care, etc. And they will try and collect from other faith groups, which will be a bit scrappy. We all know it's not going to be great, but what's the Buddhist community doing? What's the Muslim community offering in terms of community services, right? Together, it will be a national impact audit, which says, and I'll bring the church bit, the congregational bit, but we'll go, this is the dollar value of the services that local churches or religious organizations are offering to the Australian community. So what we're trying to do this time is actually, in a sense, support churches to step forward and be able to build a bit of confidence again about, they know they're doing their op shops and their community gardens and their emergency relief and their financial counseling. They know they're doing that. What we're asking them is, tell us, we will tell you, and we will tell Australia about this good that the church is offering to the Australian community in a way that it'll be some big number. It doesn't matter what the number is. It'll be a big number, but it'll be again about churches going, we've been a bit hammered over the last years, but we offer something of value. And we've been doing that faithful service of our communities. And that's part of what the process is. Okay. So just thought I'd let you know that so that you're aware of that coming. This is NCLS reports, a sample from last time to go. This is the library online free reports that you'll be able to download to grab stuff. So you can see from last time, if you zoom in, there's reports on the views of young adults, views of youth, views of men, of women, of baby boomers, of rural people, of long-termers, of people in Tasmania, people in Queensland. So you can just go, there's a global justice one, there's a discipleship report, there's new churches, there's thriving leadership, there's innovation, this is just what we did last time. It's going to be the same again. There'll be so much research provided to you that you'll be able to work through. Okay, let me zoom through. Just want to remind you of the community data. So I've just spent a lot of time on the Church Life Survey, but we are not the National Church Life Survey. We are NCLS Research. NCLS Research does community, it does church life, and it does schools. So I just want to remind you of that and go, if you are interested in Australian spirituality, we have annual surveys that have material in them that you could dive into. In terms of the student ones and the school ones, again, just really quickly, I'll go through. These are the 6 themes that we are collecting around schools. If you want to do a study of a single school or a cohort of schools, we have the tools, we're ready to go. It's 10 minutes. The students take 10 minutes to do this survey, and they get their report within 24, 48 hours. So it's really fantastic. Schools are loving it. They're coming back. This is our 3rd year now of doing this. It's going really well. So, and they're now rolling out, they want a staff one as well. So well-being, identity, beliefs, experience, practice. And the really fun one is in the formation, where it's the students, the high school students say, who are the people around me that influence how I am thinking about spiritual life? What are the practices that I find helpful? What would I do to help me understand Christianity more? What are the barriers that are stopping me? And we have that now for thousands of students. So really interesting, rich data that we give it to the school. They're doing brilliant work with it on the ground. But again, from a research perspective, there's so much that could be done. All right, and I'm running out of time, so I'll do this very quickly. How we can give you resources, and I might, is sort of, what I'm aware is a lot of your students or perhaps your staff are not going to feel confident about using empirical research, maybe not feel confident about using statistics. So we've already been thinking about how to give you material so that you can pass it on or you can use it, and you don't have to become a statistician, but there's multiple levels. So there are very simple descriptives, which is just how many are up one end, how many are the other, counting heads, things like that. And I think this is the kind of level that you can use in assignments, but it also could use in theses. It can be discussion starters, and we can give you a lot of material that is really quite accessible. Another example, and this is thank you to Ian. These 2 examples come from Ian. What we've done is we can find churches that fit a certain criteria. And then your research could be based on going and doing deep dive case studies on those research. So Ian did this. He said, could you find me churches that have high levels of newcomers who've not been part of church before? We found them, and then we introduced Ian to those churches, and he went and studied them. Same with preaching. He found churches, we found the churches where we said the people highly value preaching. He then went and studied them. So Ian is great to have a chat with about how he did that. But pick a thing. We can find churches that exemplify that, and then you could go and actually deep dive and or your students can go and visit them, understand them more. So I think that's a very viable but rich way where you've got some quantitative data with that sort of interview, case study, sort of more, I've forgotten the word, anthropological data. Yeah. I'll skip past that. The next thing that I think we can give you is what we'll call a cross-tabulation, which is segment analysis. And this is what I think we could give you where, again, you pick a topic, pick an issue, one question, and then we will give you a report that shows you who agrees or disagrees with whatever that issue is. And you can see, I've just put here on the screen here a couple of examples, but this is a real one. There is Asian female Protestant church attenders compared with Asian female Catholic church attenders. So you can see we get very detailed and study a particular grouping. And I think these profiles, if we give you a document, then you can use it with a class, you can use it for an assignment, you can use it for your own work. We basically give you like a data catalog. You don't have to do any stats. You just have to look at the results. And so I'll give you this example that I happened to find, which is from our community survey, pride in the Australian way of life. So to what extent do you take pride in the Australian way of life and culture? You see the overall result. And then you get to see, if I'm looking at the age breakdown, I can very easily see, and we can train you to read these as well if you're not feeling confident with charts. But you go, I can immediately, something's going on with age because the purple bars are different lengths, right? So there's some difference. Age makes a difference to how you answer the question. Gender doesn't really make a difference. The bars are basically the same length. So it's, I'm being very fast here, but that's the kind of thing we can do where we can give you a standard template and you can put whatever question you put in. We could put, do you have a sense of belonging to this church? Do you feel your gifts are empowered? Do you like the preaching? Whatever the question is, and then we can go, we'll show you the difference for men and women, young people and older people, people of high education, people who are highly religious, whatever it is, different ethnic backgrounds. So we're trying to give you like a standardized template that you'll be able to use. Complex analysis, if you want it and love it, we can do, and again, I'm going to go really fast, cluster analysis, factor analysis, regression analysis, complex structural equation modeling. We can do all of that high level analysis as well. But if you feel a bit like, I'm not so keen on that and my students are never going to do that, we also bring it down to bite size. We have short videos, we have webinars, we have social media feeds, we have an e-news that if your students or your scholars want to sign up to, you will find out what our latest thing is. So just as an example, this is this week's e-news. We've highlighted safeguarding children and vulnerable people and another 2 reports on climate related attitudes and behaviors that we've done. And we've gone, hey, here's these latest reports. So you get to see what the latest stuff is to entice you. Right, I'm going to pause there because that's a gallop through, but I'll pause and just see what kind of questions you have. But again, I hope the message is we're here to help. We want to build excellence in research, and you have the keys to the treasure trove now, and we just need you to actually put the key in the door and open and come and talk to us, and we want to support your research or your students' research.
Thanks very much, Ruth. Stuart shot his hand up there.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Just thank you so much. That's really helpful. A lot more data than I was aware of, which is great to see. That's the point of being here. Could you just tell us what that key is and how we actually turn the key? Do we all contact you? Do we Is there a fee per data? Is there help at your end to do things? How does it actually work?
I think we're in a bit of a dialogue process at the moment to refine how we'll do it. So Edwina and Ian and I have done some initial talking, and there are some things that the agreement that we have with AUT gives you as a matter of course. Like there's some givens where you go, you will have access to a database of 5,000 cases, right? That if someone wants to, they can use it. You can have access to certain things already that are pre-given. Then there's the capacity to actually get more complicated and go, oh, I'd like a special bespoke request for my special research project. And at that simple level, like those research profiles I was describing, that might be, look, for students, let's get some standardized templates that we go, you can all have them, every college can have them, and you can practice on those and try them out. I think that's where we might start. But if you wanted some bespoke bits, or you have a PhD student or something, I think we'll probably have to work out some way where a request comes in, we evaluate it, we describe what's possible, and then we'll probably say, look, that would take us 6 hours to get that ready for you. And depending on the capacity of the student, do we need to write up a summary of the results? Do we just give them the data? There'll be some levels of, again, simple to, how much hands-on we need to be. Are we a statistical service for the PhD student and actually give them enough for a full thesis, for example, right through to this is something for one of you to do a research project with. So I'll repeat that back for my own sake for clarity. There will be given things, templates that we will deliver to you and create some kind of library or some way of passing that on. And then there'll be the special request versions. Edwina, you might want to say something more about that, but I'm trying to make it like we want to get going, but also we know but it depends on what you think is useful as well.
Yeah. So one of the things we've got, for example, as part of our agreement is 40 hours of senior research time and so on. So, but we're not exactly sure what that'll get us. So Ian's going to do a pilot program where we give him 4 hours and see what he can do with that 4 hours of data. And then we can say, okay, 4 hours, yeah, that was great. It gives you this. And we can say, well, you probably use the competitive grant process and say, okay, submit your application and so on. Or we might go, 4 hours didn't get anywhere near what we wanted. We really need 10 or, So I wanted to do a pilot first so that we know what will work before we, or it might be like, it only took us 2 hours. If it takes 2 hours, obviously we can do a lot more. So, and I think
this is 2 hours of NCLS research time. It's like where you're coming to the university's research services team and saying, can you get me results in a format I can cope with? How many hours do you think it'll take? And if we go, look, it's going to be spreadsheets and a whole lot of numbers and we don't have to describe it to you, we can do that in 2 hours or 4 hours. If you need us to actually tell you what it means, well, that's going to take 10 hours because we're going to have to look at it and write up some notes for you. So it's that kind of thing that we'll experiment. What can we give with a bank of hours?
Yeah. But some of the things, as you said, Ruth, you've already got lots of beautiful reports that we're probably not using to the extent that we could with our coursework students, for example, that can be the basis for assignments or class discussion or whatever. So I think some of those things would be useful. But yeah, we can also say, hey, for our worship course or our evangelism course, let's put together this particular standard data, simplified data for people to engage with.
And if we think in terms of fact sheets or these
fact sheets,
fact sheets might be incredibly simple. It's just how many people think X, Y, Z. That could be a fact sheet level. A research profile is that next level. How many people think X, and what's the difference between men and women? What's the difference between young people? That's sort of next level up, and it requires you to read those kind of charts. And we can add statistical notes going, this is significant, this is not. So we're experimenting, but we'd like you to also help us. Tell us what sounds helpful to you as well.
And you're going to be able to split it more if there are questions that went to everybody rather than if there's questions that only went to 1,200 people or something like that.
I suspect if there was, that's wonderful, thank you. And I get the provisionality of what you're saying, that's fine. I suspect if there was a list of what you just said, Edwina, and the questions, the actual questions that were asked, then people go, oh, I want that bit, and I want that bit, and on that other thing I'll have that, and I'll compare the big survey to the little one, and that would save a lot of time rather than me coming up with, so you got anything on mission attitudes? Well, yeah, I might be able to see these questions and I want to compare that to these questions, so that'd be really handy if that was just like a resource you could tap into and see, and then you can ask those questions.
We have done something like that in the past, and we've actually found it sounds like it makes sense, and we can certainly provide it. What we've found is people have been a bit overwhelmed by the number of questions, firstly. And when you ask more your research question, not just what's the survey question, but my research question is, I want to know, I'll pick personality and preaching, the personality styles of preachers who get the greatest engagement from their people, then that would be an NCLS person. I go, right, I know what to do. I'm going to give you questions from survey B, from the leaders survey, and I'm going to join them up with this, and I'll give you the answer, but I'll actually construct it for you.
Right.
And I know where everything is. And so happy to try it, but I think as often as not, it'll be like, I'm overwhelmed. Can you just tell me, can you do this? And we go, yes, we can. This is how we would do it. Or here's 3 ways we could do it. What matches what you want most,
Right. I did find just seeing those slides and the topics that you had there were suggestive to me of things,
yes,
which I wouldn't have necessarily thought about. That's why at some point, even if it's not the actual questions, just to have all those headings and the groupings of it, that would just stimulate thought as, that would be good to do,
Yes, yes. And I think I've already provided that to Edwina. So we do already have that kind of documentation. So I understand it's trying to stimulate you to go, what have you got on disability, which is what AUT's getting some leadership in. Yeah.
I think, Ian, you might send out that list again.
Yes.
Now that we've had the meeting and now that we're all enthusiastic, we might send out the list again. And I mean, I'd also like to see some co-written articles and so on. So I see a number of people in the group are interested in similar kind of things. It might be worth working together on a paper, which will, especially if you haven't been in the practice of doing research much lately, to work with someone else can be helpful. I mean, we got university status because of our research, our world standard research, but ministry and practice hasn't always been the area where that research has come from. Obviously, people are practitioners, they're keen to be out there with the people, but also research is really important for what we're training people to do, like what works and what doesn't work, and what new approaches can we take. So I don't want ministry and practice to be a research-free space. I found an interview I did when I was just starting in this role, and one of the things, it was like, what do you want to see happen more of, or something in AUT, and it was us engaging in research that impacts society and makes a difference. So we're still going to keep doing our Bible and our church history, which is my thing, and theology, but we want to do more of engaging with churches and engaging with the wider society. So this group of people is really important for that. So if you have, Ian's going to send out the list to get you, salivating over, and if you have specific things you're interested in, if you can send it to Ian and I, and then we can kind of distill it a bit and work through it, and then we can send it to have further conversations with Ruth about it.
Thanks, Edwina. Well, that is our time. I'm thinking that we've got another Research Network meeting planned for later in the year. If we work towards perhaps doing a workshop-y type thing, either with a case example of, working through, I had this idea for research. This is how the NCLS helped me. This is how I did the theological reflection around it. These are the recommendations. This is how I disperse the information, that might be helpful. We might not be able to do that, but I'm just thinking it'd be good to keep talking about this, I think, and perhaps in a couple of months' time we'll have a bit more details about how it'll actually work with Stuart's analogy of turning the key and going forward. But are there any... okay, so thanks. Ruth put up her contact details there. Feel free to contact me or Edwina as well.
I'm just thinking if anybody, again, I'm really looking for feedback from you about how we do take the next step and what ideas have resonated with you or whatever. So again, if you have concrete ideas about, say, coursework or, links with particular kinds of assignments or anything like that, and you want to just test things out, I'd really love to hear from you as well. I mean, copy us all in, but I'm really looking for we can have ideas, but unless it lands with you or you have a good idea, we can go, oh, we can do that. That's a great, I'm really looking for this feedback from you before we press on. I think that the pilot idea is great, but please be proactive with sharing your reflections while hopefully you've been stimulated about what you think could be helpful. Yeah.
Right. All righty. Well, thank you, everyone, for your time. And thank you particularly for Ruth for coming and sharing. And look forward to seeing you around the traps. Bye.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Good. Oh, good.